Now, besides your story with walking in Gucci and having a different feeling, were there any other things that really impressed you on your first trip back?
This is really critically important for all veterans coming back here. It's the acceptance of the Vietnamese people. Because the Vietnamese people look at this as the American War. 65% of your population wasn't born then, and they have no memory of the war. Exactly. And their perspective is, apparently through your education, that that's over. And we're now at peace and we need to move on. And that's very clear. I have never, in the years that I've been coming back here, met an angry Vietnamese person who has treated us in any other way except with respect and kindness. You don't even see that in the United States in all the cities.
How many times have you been to Vietnam? Maybe back to Vietnam?
I've been back 5 times, twice with the Tours of Peace group where I met Tony, and then once with Soldier's Heart, and now I lead, and my wife Lindsley, we lead trips together for Soldier's Heart. And so this is my 5th trip back. We do a little unique change. Dr. Tick, who wrote the book War in the Soul, and he's the director of Soldier's Heart, he leads a trip back to Vietnam also. That was the first trip we went with back in 2006. And now Lindsley and I lead the trips in the springtime for Soldier's Heart. So 5th time, but we do clinics on my trip. And so I bring therapists along with veterans, and we do clinics around the country. And this time we're able to hook up with the Vietnam Veterans of America Foundation and did a number of clinics in the Agent Orange villages and schools for them. So it was a little different twist on some of the other trips that come back.
And Dr. Lewick, you say you are a therapist. Can you tell us about the trips that you've taken?
What I found was it was critically important to bring the veteran back to exactly where they serve so that they can experience that emotional release. One of the other things that became important was that every trip we do is designed so a veteran sponsors a humanitarian project. And that's where the idea of giving back came from. So each of the trips involves humanitarian work. This time we provided funds for medicines at a leprosy village just north of Ho Chi Minh City, and an orphanage in Hue. We provided 19 scholarships for high school students in Hue from poor families, and several other projects. So the American Veterans Quest for Peace provided that funding this time. But when we do design trips, it is designed around humanitarian work.
You talk about this memory where you revisit a place where you were first kind of shot at. And you also mention the healing process in terms of you helping other American veterans to heal and you healing at the same time. Are you completely healed now?
Am I healed now? Well, you know, you just saw me shed a tear right here, and so, you know, what I say is that I've done a lot of work, both traveling back to Vietnam, and I've written 2 books here. I see these giant pictures of my books. I'm so proud. And they have been a very important part of my healing. And then I met Dr. Tick. And both Tony and I have met Dr. Tick and traveled with him, actually. And Dr. Tick has put together a lot of different cultures and how they heal from war. And basically what the premise of the book is that in a time of severe combat and severe trauma, could happen to anybody, but a combat veteran in particular, you lose part of yourself. You lose your identity. And he terms it down to the soul. You lose your very own soul. You don't lose it, but you become estranged from who you are. And you know, some war memories, they still come back and they still hurt. But I think I am healed. Yes, I think that not very many veterans can say that. And I think that that's what we're working on. We're working on making warriors out of veterans.
And there are powerful memories. So you don't ever totally forget them. They're present. It's just a question of how are you able to cope and move on. We have over 60% of our veterans who came back from the Vietnam War, integrated back into society, obtained education and went on their jobs, and did perfectly fine. And then we have some 10-15% that had such severe problems that they were really unable to function in a standard way in society and maintain jobs and maintain marriages and be able to interact with their children in a positive way. So we have that wide range.
Crystal Lynn Presley, a lecturer at Capella University in Minnesota, is the daughter of an American veteran who was haunted by what he had seen during his mission to Central Vietnam to investigate the My Lai massacre that took place back in 1968. Suffering severe PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, he keeps himself away from his own family. Last November, Crystal made a breakthrough when she had him talk to her every day, which inspired her to write the book, 30 Days with My Father. For the first time in 30 years, he shared with her some of his war memories. On the first trip to Vietnam this time, Crystal visited the site that had haunted her father over the years. She said she felt much healed from a minor PTSD that she's inherited from her father. Now she has a deeper understanding about her father and knows how to help him mend the wounds of war in his soul.
Now, one of the youngest member in the group this time is Crystal Presley. She's the daughter of an American veteran. Her father was not able to come with her this time, but she is luckily here in our studio. So please join me in welcoming Crystal. Hi, Crystal. Thank you very much for coming on to the show today. Is this your first trip to Vietnam?
It is.
Yes. Why did you decide to come along with the group this time?
Well, my father was in the Vietnam War, and he never really talked about his experiences. I think that they haunted him for most of his life. And growing up, as John said before, in our history books and the way people in the USA perceive Vietnam, it's more a war than anything else. And I wanted to see this country as more than a war, and I wanted to better understand my father's experiences. I wanted to walk on some of the same ground that he had walked on so many years ago.
Now, you say that walking on the same ground that he has walked on, so you went to the places where he served.
I did. I went to one particular place near Tu Lai, a landing zone called Bayonet that's now a rock quarry.
Mm-hmm. So what were your feelings then, the moment you got there?
I was scared to death. I wasn't really sure what to expect. And when I got there, as we were walking up the hill, I was arm in arm with John and his daughter, Skaya. A really peaceful feeling came over me. And I think there was an understanding that there was something holy and a real connection that I had just made with my father that I had never made before, even living in the same house with him.
Now, we understand that your father has been suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, the one that Dr. Luick has mentioned. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
And I think my father falls in the category where it's particularly severe. Growing up, my father was unable to have a really close relationship with either my mother or with me. He was very angry. There were a lot of things that triggered him, such as loud noises, particularly. And so he preferred to spend a lot of time alone. So I really feel like for 31 years, I did not know my father, because if there was a choice to spend time away from his family, he usually took that choice. He very often simply locked himself in a room.
How is he doing now?
He's actually doing much better.